So, being transformed by the renewing of your mind is shared by, I think, just about anyone. I think anyone could benefit from that. Renewing of your mind. Why does my mind need to be renewed? Well, because of the negative aspects of acculturation, that you sort of become this product of this cultural imposition of values and precepts and concepts, to the point that you don't even really know who you uniquely are, because you only look at yourself as a product of this cultural context. But to prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God, I think that's really what the key is here, is what Paul is trying to say. You got to divest yourself of all of those external strictures that have hampered you in the past and currently, so that you can objectively discern how to proceed. And you want to proceed in a healthy way. If you're here at step 4,862 and you got to get to 4,863 towards your own freedom, then you need to recognize those external pressures that are sort of almost pushing you back to step 3,000 and 2,000 or whatever it might be. And this idea of not being conformed to the world, man, I tell you, there's a good reason why these two verses are spoken of frequently. And having said that, I think that's kind of a good litmus test for, what in the Bible here should I be focusing on? What should I be accepting as, trustworthy communication? I would look at verses like this, Romans 12:1 and 2, much more than I would look at the second half of the entire book of 2 Corinthians. Because the second half of, like I said earlier, of the second book of Corinthians is really more Paul just saying, I'm an apostle, you guys need to face up to the fact, and because I'm an apostle and you've benefited from my teaching, you need to be giving me some money, or you need to be supporting me in some way. That's a totally different form of communication or content than this, which really can be applied to so many different people. And that's an interesting way, I think, of looking at it. If you're looking at sacred texts and you're trying to discover, what's good for me, what's not good for me, what can I bank my life on, and what's extraneous material, I think a pretty good litmus test would probably be those verses that really could be applied to just about anybody. Whereas that second half of the book of Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, is really Paul talking to the Corinthians about not accepting him for who he is and not rewarding him. That's a very specific interest and concern he had that he was addressing. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have done that. I'm just saying, in the context of what is sacred text, I would go with something like this that has more of a universal appeal to it than something like that, which is clearly parochial. All right, having said that, I'm going to let you think about it for a minute, and I will be back, and I will mysteriously be transported to another space and time. Oh. Sorry about that. Can you hear this music? I hope you can. So, next verse. For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. Now that's another example of something that could apply to all of us, and I think that's a good, like I said, a good way of testing the sacredness of certain texts. And just this idea of thinking of others, not to think more highly of yourself. You know, you think of like how many divisions have been created over that misstep. And, you know, and if you're oblivious to that, you know, oblivious to the fact that you do consider yourself more highly than you ought, you know, that is going to be a major stumbling block for your own development, as well as for the development of the world as a whole.